happy to introduce you Lene Rachel Andersen, the author of 5 books, if I'm right. So, and who, if not you, who is not really just a heart, but also a blood pressure of this whole movement and event, and and who, if not you, could tell us why building is so significant. So, Lene, please.
Yes, I wrote a piece in this book called The Significance of Bildung. And in it, I present Friedrich Schiller's definition of Bildung and how that relates to society and democracy, because he says that only free people can handle political freedom. And so what does he mean by that? So Friedrich Schiller was born in, I think, 1759, and so he was in his what would that be, early 30s in the around the time of the, actually he would be 30 years old at the time of the French Revolution, and that was a feudal society where you had the kings and so the monarchs, and then you had the clergy, and then you had the aristocracy, and then you had the third estate, and the uh, aristocracy had all the privileges, and the third estate had all the obligations. And you had a bourgeoisie that became a middle class that didn't fit into this feudal structure. They were also the ones investing in colonizing the world and in the steam engine once that was invented. So some of them became very rich and had a lot of economic power, but they lived in a feudal society that was authoritarian, and they didn't have any political freedom. So first they saw the American Revolution, and they were like, we want some of that stuff. And then they saw the French Revolution, and they got very excited because finally one of the tyrants in Europe fell, and they thought they could have political freedom. And then the French Revolution turned into a bloodbath. And there was a fear in Europe that there would be more revolutions and more bloodbaths. And of course, the aristocracy and the kings were not too enthusiastic about that, but there were also a lot of people in the bourgeoisie, of course, who did not like the idea of having their society turning into a bloodbath. So Friedrich Schiller started thinking about why could the French not handle political freedom? And he said that that's because there are 3 kinds of people. And the first kind of person is in the throes of his or her emotions and therefore cannot overrule his sentiments. And so he or she is not free. The second kind of person is has transcended the emotions by internalizing everybody else's expectations and norms. And so that person is not free either, because they're constantly trying to figure out, what am I going to do for everybody else to like me? And how do I fit in? And what is the right thing to do? Let me see what everybody else is doing. And if you live your life like that, you can be a team player, you can be a reliable, good friend and business partner and spouse and things like that, but you're not a free person. The free person, the third kind of person, has reconnected with his or her emotions and still cares about society and the social norms and what it means to be a good person in the eyes of the rest of society. And once you have both the norms of society and your own emotions and can feel them inside yourself, if there's a conflict between the two, you need to make a choice. Do I follow everybody else's expectations, or do I follow my emotions? And that is where freedom arises, because you need to figure out what you think and how you're going to act when there is a conflict. And the interesting thing, there are a couple of interesting things in this. One is that Friedrich Schiller said that the process is Bildung and the result is Bildung. And the way that you transcend your emotions is through aesthetics. So you need calming aesthetics that allows you to feel the same as everybody else. And that's what we experience when we hear music that's really beautiful, calming, or when we watch great art or something where our emotions can come into tune with everybody else. But then when you're socialized into this warm and fuzzy feeling that you share with everybody else, you need to wake up and feel your own emotions again. And that's when we need the invigorating beauty, as he calls it, so we can feel our own emotions and detach ourselves from the emotions of everybody else and have our own emotions while we still have the norms of society inside us. So that's another interesting thing. And then the third interesting thing is that he says that it's only the free people who can handle political freedom. So that when the French could not handle political freedom, it's because the emotional people, once they saw blood, they wanted to see more blood. They were angry. And the people who did what everybody else does, um, they ran with the emotional people. The only people who could have stopped the revolution and not be all caught up in emotions and anger would have been the free people. And so he connects this Bildung, emotional development, moral development, personal development, I guess we would call it in modern psychological terms, with the ability to handle political freedom. And so in my text, in What It Means to Be Human, I explore or start with suggesting three different kinds of society. And the first society I call Society A. And in Society A, everybody is the emotional person. And in the society, the police officers and the school teachers and the plumbers and everybody has the same good education as you would see in some of the best, richest societies in the world today. But they're all caught up in their emotions. So whenever they face any kind of conflict or decision or anything, they will just let their emotions decide. So that's Society A, and it's a whole society of emotional people. Then you got Society B, and in Society B, everybody is what Schiller called the rational person, the person who's internalized the rationale of society. And again, all the plumbers and police officers and school teachers, everybody has really good education. They're all tip top educated for their profession, and they know all kinds of stuff. They even know math and science and stuff, but they all think, what would people think about me if I did this? Would they still like me? And so they would only do what everybody else does. And then there's the Society C, which is where people are the free people and where they have the same good education, but they can feel their own emotions and they've internalized the norms of society. And whenever they face a choice, a conflict, a political issue, or a private issue, they actually need to figure out, am I following my emotions or am I following the expectations of everybody else? And they would be the people who would have the moral courage if their emotions were disagreeing with everybody else to say, you know what, I think what everybody else is saying is wrong, or at least misguided. I think we should go in another direction, and I have the moral courage to speak up and disagree with people. I don't think there was ever a society that was as clear cut A, B, or C as I have suggested here. But I'm trained as an economist, and economists like to come up with all these scenarios that are perfect and very clear cut, and just to illustrate a point. And the point that I would like to illustrate here is that all that transferable kind of knowledge that we get from um, the current school system, all the knowledge that you can measure, all the skills that you can train, and where we can test whether people have learned how to be a plumber or whether they've learned the math and the science. That is not enough. It's important. We can't have airline pilots or doctors who don't know what they're doing when they're flying an airplane, or surgeons who are operating on people. Um, but that won't keep us safe in society if everybody is just following their emotions and that's how they're self-ruling themselves. And we won't be safe either if everybody is just doing what everybody else does. Um, we need the other aspect of our personal development, which is the life experience, the emotional development, the emotional depth, the connection to ourselves, to our social relationships, and to our cultural heritage. And that is the other part of Bildung. So Bildung is partly the transferable knowledge that we need to have in order to understand cognitively, intellectually what is going on around us. And then we need the life experience that gives us the emotional depth. And it's from the life experience that we can also make this transition and have this Bildung development that Friedrich Schiller was talking about. And if you imagine a society of really skillful people who were just in the throes of their emotions all the time, I bet you would have chaos pretty quickly. If you had a society where everybody is just doing what everybody else is doing, you can have totalitarianism and authoritarianism, and you cannot have a free, open democracy or society. But if you have a society where you have all these free people, people who can feel for themselves and who can also feel with other people, you can actually have um, a stable, open, democratic society where people can handle disagreement and where they can use their personal, professional, academic, practical skills for the benefit not just of themselves, but also for the rest of society. And they can be trusted and they can be team players. And as I said, there's never been a society that's like 100% one of these three kinds of people. But I bet that if we were to move somewhere to another place or invest in a country or send our kids to school in a country, we would probably prefer Society C rather than having sending our kids to school or home with friends if all their parents were just following their emotions, or if all the adults around them would be in Society B and just do what everybody else does. Um, and I doubt that somebody who was growing up in a Society C and used to having this complexity of mind and emotions and social norms would voluntarily move to a society where everybody just did as everybody else, or where everybody was in the throes of their emotions. So this also has consequences for society. And so if we have educational systems that just transfer knowledge that can be transferred easily from person to person, and we don't have that emotional development, the life experience, the aesthetics, the emotional depth, and we don't promote it in our educational systems, we cannot have democracy and we cannot have these free and open societies. So that is part of the significance of Bildung. The other part is, of course, that your life just becomes more interesting. The more you know and the deeper your emotional sort of depth and spectrum is, the more you can relate to different kinds of people, the more you can relate to different kinds of new information, and the more you can engage and feel a resonance with your surroundings. So, so that is part of the significance of Bildung. Thank you.